My name is Rosario, and sometimes, when the late afternoon drifts quietly through the windows of my little kitchen, time settles beside me like an old friend. Today, it was the smell of coffee that stirred something warm in my chest, that gentle, familiar scent that always seems to arrive before the kettle even finishes sighing. Funny how certain aromas know exactly which doors inside the heart to open, doors you'd swear were locked for decades. I sat here, wrapped in that soft golden light resting on the table, and I found myself smiling. I was thinking of young people, how quickly they talk about love these days, how fast they want to feel everything all at once, as if the heart might miss the next train if it doesn't hurry. They say they know what love is, and I don't doubt they feel something beautiful, intense, maybe even sincere. But what I've learned in these 82 years of living through missteps and small miracles is that true love rarely arrives with noise. It doesn't shout, it doesn't demand applause. It comes the way this evening does, silent, steady, complete. As the steam curled up from my cup, thin as a string of memory, I thought about my own youth. Back then, I believed love was made only of sighs and promises. Maybe that's why I stumbled a few times, but with the kind of sweetness only a young girl can carry. Now, looking back, I feel a deep tenderness for that girl I once was. Sometimes, I even wish I could speak to her, hold her shoulders and whisper, "Slow down, querida. Love has its own way of arriving." But instead of going back in time, I chose to speak to you. Because maybe, somewhere in the quiet of your night, someone needs to hear a little of what time has taught me. Not to preach, not to instruct, but simply to share the gentle truths that years have placed in my hands. So, here I sit, the coffee still warm between my palms, letting the evening breeze cool the corners of my memories, and I begin my story. You know, as I sit here watching the sky fade into that tender shade between gold and blue, I realize something simple. Young people aren't wrong about love. They're just standing at the beginning of a road that they can't see the end of yet. And beginnings, they always feel bigger than they really are. They sparkle. They move fast. They make the heart believe it has finally discovered its true purpose. But love, real love, is not found only in those bright early moments. It's not the fireworks. It's the glow that stays after the smoke disappears. When I was young, I thought love was a single moment you recognized, like the sound of a key fitting flawlessly into a lock. I believed that once you felt it, that lightning, that trembling, that dizzy sweetness, the rest would simply unfold on its own. I thought the feeling itself was enough to carry two people through the years. But feelings, they are delicate creatures. They change shape like the light in this room. Sometimes they rest quietly. Sometimes they hide behind the clouds of worry or pride or exhaustion. And if you chase only the feeling, you spend your life running after something that was never meant to stay still. True love, the kind that lasts through seasons, through silence, through those long, slow years, is not a feeling. It's a practice, a way of showing up day after ordinary day. Young people often think that if a love grows quiet, it must be dying. They panic when the butterflies settle, or when the conversations become softer, or when daily life slips between them like a gentle, boring old blanket. But there is a beauty in that quietness that only time can teach you to notice. Because love changes its music. At first, it is a song you dance to. Later, it becomes a song you live inside of. I wish someone had told me that when I was 18, standing barefoot in my mother's courtyard, believing that love should always feel like running downhill with your heart racing ahead of your body. I wish someone had said, "Child, don't be afraid when love becomes calm. That calm is not the end. It is the beginning of depth." But maybe no one could have taught me. Some things the heart doesn't learn by listening. It learns by surviving, by losing, by starting again. So tonight, as I sit here with you, I want us to walk gently into this truth together, that love is not the spark, but the warmth that remains. And if the young could slow down long enough to feel that warmth, perhaps they would stop believing that love needs to perform. It doesn't. Love is most itself in silence. And with that thought resting softly between us, let me take you back to a memory. The first time I mistook a beautiful moment for something everlasting. Let me take you back with me. Many, many years ago, when my hair was still thick and black as midnight, and my heart was so new it believed everything it felt was a revelation. I must have been 17, maybe 18. Old enough to pretend I understood the world, young enough to be completely wrong about it. It was a warm evening in my little hometown in Mexico, the kind of evening when the air feels like a soft shawl resting across your shoulders. The plaza was alive with music drifting from an old radio perched on a windowsill, and the smell of roasted corn floated through the square. Women talked in clusters, men leaned against bicycles, children darted around like sparrows. Everything shimmered with a gentle magic that only small towns know how to keep alive. And that was the night I met Emilio. He wasn't the kind of boy the girls usually whispered about. He didn't have shiny shoes or a loud laugh or the swagger that made some boys look like they owned the street. No. Emilio was quiet, a little shy. He stood near the fountain with his hands tucked into his pockets, as if he didn't quite trust them to behave. But his eyes, his eyes were warm, steady, and so honest, they made you look away before you realized you were staring too long. I remember he didn't ask me to dance, not at first. He just stood beside me while I pretended to be fascinated by the lanterns hanging from the trees. Then he said very softly, "You know, you don't have to look nervous. The lanterns can't judge you." I laughed, a small startled laugh, because no boy had ever spoken to me that way, gently teasing but respectful. When the next song began, some old bolero with a voice that carried more heartbreak than volume, he finally held out his hand. I don't know why I took it so quickly, maybe because my heart recognized something before my mind did. We danced, like two people trying not to disturb the night. His hand on my waist was careful, and I could feel the slight tremble in his fingers, which only made me like him more. The air smelled of dust and orchids, and somewhere nearby a dog barked as if reminding the moon to keep shining. I thought in that moment that this must be what love felt like. Soft music, soft air, soft glances. I believed that the world had shifted its weight a little just to make space for the two of us. When he walked me home that night, we didn't talk much. Our silence felt full, like a basket carrying something precious. Before I went inside, he told me, "I'm not good with words, but I'll try to be good to you." And oh, my foolish young heart, those 9 little words were enough to make me think the future was already written. We spent weeks like that, walking slowly, talking in half sentences, sharing pieces of ourselves we were still discovering. He once brought me a small paper flower he folded himself because he didn't want to give me something that wouldn't last. I kept that flower for years. Even now, I sometimes wonder where it ended up, tucked in some forgotten drawer or carried away by time like so many other tiny treasures of youth. But here's the thing. As beautiful as it was, what I felt wasn't love, not the kind I know now. It was hope dressed as security. It was longing wearing the costume of destiny. It was my heart learning how to beat for someone else and mistaking the rhythm for a promise. You see, Emilio was gentle, and I cared for him deeply. But caring is not the same as knowing. And I knew so little then about myself, about life, about the quiet sacrifices real love requires. We were two young hearts trying to build a future on feelings that were still brand new. And feelings alone, well, they cannot hold the weight of years. Our story didn't end with heartbreak, not exactly. It ended with life pulling us in different directions. His family moved north for work, and mine stayed rooted in the soil of our small town. We didn't fight or cry. Love is not the feeling that begins the story. Love is the practice that continues it. When you are young, you look for signs. Does he look at me the same way? Does she miss me when I'm gone? Does this feel magical, overwhelming, unforgettable? But love, the kind that lasts longer than seasons, that stands when life shakes the ground beneath your feet, is made of moments so ordinary they almost go unnoticed. It's in folding laundry together, in grocery lists scribbled on the backs of envelopes, in the quiet apology whispered before sleep. It's the hand that reaches for yours without asking, the chair pulled out for you without thinking, the way two people who have built a life together begin to move through the world with the same rhythm, not because of passion, but because of presence. Love is choosing someone again on days that feel dull. It's staying soft when the world turns hard. It's listening when you're tired and forgiving when pride begs you not to. Young people often believe that love should feel like being lifted off the ground. But the truth? Real love is the thing that lets your feet finally touch the earth. It brings a steadiness, a quietness, a feeling that you can breathe. You stop performing. You stop proving. You start being. I used to think love was something that happened to you, like rain or luck or fate. But with time, I learned that love is something you make, slowly, with two imperfect hands. You shape it with kindness. You mend it after mistakes. You carry it even when your arms are tired because you know that someone is carrying it with you. And here is the part young people rarely understand. The silence between two people can say more about love than all the passionate words in the world. There is a silence that feels cold, distant, frightening. That silence means something is breaking. But there is another silence, the kind that grows only after years of shared life. A silence that wraps itself around you like a familiar blanket. A silence where two people can sit together, not speaking, not performing, just existing, and feel entirely understood. That silence, that is love's true language. If someone had told me this at 17, I might have laughed. I wanted grand gestures, not quiet comfort. I wanted intensity, not steadiness. I thought a heart racing meant a heart choosing. But hearts that race eventually tire. Hearts that rest together learn how to last. Sometimes I imagine young couples rushing through their days, mistaking noise for depth, thinking the calm means the end. And I want to whisper to them, don't run from the quiet. That quiet is where love begins to deepen. Because the truth is simple. Fireworks fade. Embers warm a home. And in the long story of a life, in the years that stretch, twist, soften, and reshape you, it's the warmth that stays. By the time I crossed the border into the United States, I was no longer the girl who danced barefoot in the Mexican plaza. Life had already stretched me, shaped me, softened and hardened me in different places. I had seen enough to understand that love was not a guarantee. It was an offering. And offerings must be tended, honored, protected. That's when I met Daniel. He was nothing like Emilio. At first glance, he seemed almost too serious. The kind of man who carried responsibility the way others carried a jacket. Always on him, always ready. But there was a gentleness in his shoulders, a carefulness in the way he placed things, as if the world were fragile and he didn't want to break anything he touched. We met in a small grocery store on a cold morning in Texas. I remember my hands shaking from the chill as I tried to read the labels on cans I'd never seen before. Everything felt unfamiliar. The language, the aisles, even my own reflection in the freezer doors bundled in a borrowed coat. Daniel noticed me struggling and approached with a polite smile. "If you need help, I know this place like the back of my hand," he said. I wasn't sure if I trusted him at first, but something in his voice, calm, steady, unhurried, made me exhale a little. We ended up talking for 15 minutes in that frozen aisle, long enough for my fingertips to go numb. He told me which brands tasted closest to home, which vegetables were overpriced, and how Americans insisted on refrigerating tortillas when there was absolutely no reason to do so. We laughed. Not nervously like I had with Emilio. This was a different kind of laugh, a grounded one. A laugh that made me feel less alone in a place that still smelled foreign to me. Our love did not begin with a dance, or a glowing lantern, or a tremble in the fingertips. It began with a can of beans and a stranger who took the time to stand in the cold with me. Weeks later, after quiet conversations and gentle walks, after shared coffees and small moments of life slipping comfortably between us, I began to understand something new. Love can be simple. It doesn't always announce itself with music. Sometimes it arrives wearing the plain clothes of ordinary life. There was one evening, one I'll never forget, when I truly understood the depth of what was forming between us. A storm had rolled in unexpectedly. Thunder cracked across the sky with the arrogance of a creature too big for the room. The power went out. The whole neighborhood disappeared into darkness. I felt that familiar fear rise in me, that old fear of being far from home, far from the comforts I grew up with. Daniel noticed immediately. He didn't try to distract me with jokes or big dramatic gestures. Instead,
He lit a small candle, just one, and placed it on the table between us. The soft circle of light brushed against his face, and he looked at me with a quiet understanding. We're all right. We're here. And it's enough. Those 4 little words, "we're here and it's enough," softened something inside me that had been tense for years. The storm kept raging outside, but inside, there was only calm. We sat together in silence, listening to the rain beat rhythmically against the windows, our shadows flickering gently against the walls. It was such a simple moment, such a small, ordinary scene, yet it held more truth than 1,000 whispered promises. Love in that moment was not passion or excitement. It was presence. It was safety. It was knowing that even in the dark, someone sees you. Young people rarely understand that love shines brightest not when life is beautiful, but when life is difficult, when the lights go out, when the storm hits, when fear knocks. It's in those moments that real love answers softly, "I'm here." Years later, when I look back on that night, I don't remember what.
There was a moment, years ago, when I understood this more clearly than ever. I was sitting alone in my car outside a laundromat, exhausted from a day that had demanded too much. Daniel was sick then, nothing grave, but enough to worry me, and the weight of responsibility pressed on me like a stone. I closed my eyes and let out a long, shaky breath, not even sure what I was asking or to whom. And in that breath, in that tiny pause, something softened. Not the world, not my circumstances, something inside me. A quiet settled over my thoughts, like someone had slowly lowered the volume of fear. It wasn't an answer. It wasn't a miracle. It was simply peace. A peace that didn't come from understanding, but from trusting that I wasn't carrying everything alone. Since then, I've come to believe that faith is not a pillar you lean on. It's a light you carry within. A light that flickers sometimes, yes, but never fully goes out. A light that reminds you, gently, keep going. You're held. And maybe that's the thread I wish young people would notice. You don't need certainty to move forward. You don't need clarity to take the next step. You only need a small light, small enough to fit inside your heart, and the courage to cup your hands around it when the wind rises. That little flame has seen me through love, loss, growth, and the long, quiet seasons in between. And even now, sitting here with my evening tea cooling beside me, I feel it glowing softly inside, guiding me the way moonlight guides a traveler home. There is one memory, quiet, fragile, but steady as a heartbeat, that always returns to me when I think about love and the long years that shape it. It happened not long after Daniel passed away. Grief is strange, you know? It doesn't follow the seasons. It doesn't ask for permission. It simply arrives, lays down beside you, and waits for you to learn its language. For months after he was gone, the apartment felt too large, too quiet. The spaces where he used to stand, by the sink, by the window, by the crooked bookshelf we never fixed, felt like open wounds. I tried to keep busy, to keep moving, to keep pretending that I was fine, because that is what women of my generation were taught to do. But pretending is a heavy coat to wear every day. Eventually, it wears you down. One afternoon, I decided to take a walk through our old neighborhood. It was late summer, that in-between time, when the leaves haven't turned yet, but the air has already begun to whisper that change is coming. I walked slowly, letting the familiar sights tug at me. The bakery with its slightly burnt bread, the park bench where Daniel once spilled coffee on himself and laughed for 10 whole minutes, the corner house with the rose bush he used to admire every spring. When I reached the small pond behind the library, I stopped. We had walked there many times. Daniel loved the water, the way it reflected the world without ever holding on to it. I stood at the edge and watched the surface ripple in the afternoon breeze, and for a moment I felt that old ache rise, warm and sharp. I whispered, almost without meaning to, "I don't know how to do this without you." And then something unexpected happened. I heard a voice nearby, not his, of course, but a young couple walking past. They were arguing softly, the kind of argument that tries not to be loud but still carries the sting of misunderstanding. The girl wiped her eyes. The boy kept stuffing his hands into pockets, frustrated and unsure. They walked in circles around each other, like two hearts afraid to meet in the middle. I watched them for a moment, not intruding, just witnessing, and something inside me shifted. They were so young, so full of feeling they didn't know how to hold. And I remembered myself at their age. I remembered how little I knew, how fiercely I tried, how easily I mistook fear for failure. They paused near the pond, still talking in that hushed, trembling way. And in their young, messy love, I suddenly saw my own life reflected. All the years Daniel and I spent learning how to stay, how to choose, how to soften instead of harden. I realized something then, something I had been too broken to see. Daniel had taught me how to love another person, but losing him was teaching me how to love myself again. Because grief is not the opposite of love. It is the echo of love, lingering, stretching, asking you to keep living even when your hands feel empty. I took a slow breath and let the air settle inside me. I didn't feel healed, but I felt something else, a small, steady acceptance, a knowing that I still belonged to myself, even in loss, that life was not finished with me yet, and neither was love. Not the romantic kind, not the dramatic kind, but the kind that grows within, quietly rebuilding the rooms life once emptied. As I stood there, a leaf drifted down onto the surface of the pond. It floated effortlessly, carried by currents it didn't try to control. And I thought, maybe that is what love becomes after loss. Not something that pulls you under, but something that carries you gently, reminding you that you are still afloat. I turned back towards home, walking slowly, feeling Daniel's memory not as a wound, but as a soft light behind me, a companion, not a shadow. And for the first time since he passed, I felt a small, elegant peace. I could love him and still belong to myself. I could miss him and still move forward. I could hold his memory without losing my own life to it. And
That was a kind of love I never expected to learn. If I could gather every young heart in a single room, every person rushing to feel something intense, every soul afraid of the quiet, every bright-eyed dreamer convinced that love must always be overwhelming, I would tell them this, softly, the way one speaks in a warm kitchen late at night. Love is not what you think it is when you're young. It's better, and it's humbler. I would tell them that the spark they chase is not the whole story. Sparks are lovely, yes, but they are only invocations. What matters is the glow that comes after, the steady warmth built from kindness, patience, and the courage to show up even when the magic feels far away. I would tell them that real love won't always make your heart race. Sometimes it will make your heart rest. And that, my dear, is not boredom. That is safety. That is home. I would remind them that choosing someone every day is far more romantic than any grand gesture, that the small acts, brewing a cup of coffee, listening with full attention, forgiving quickly, laughing often, weave a life stronger than passion alone ever could. And then I would place a gentle hand over theirs and whisper one of the hardest truths to learn. You cannot love someone well if you abandon yourself in the process. Self-love is not selfish. It's not vanity. It's simply acknowledging that your heart deserves the same tenderness you offer to others. Young people often confuse self-love with pride or with pretending to be invincible, but true self-love is quiet. It's honest. It's saying, I am allowed to rest. I am allowed to grow. I am allowed to begin again. I would tell them that love, romantic or otherwise, will not always feel bright. There will be seasons when it grows slow and tired, when misunderstandings settle like dust in the corners. But if they learn to sweep gently instead of breaking the
whole house down, they'll discover a bond deeper than passion. Companionship. And perhaps most important of all, I would tell them not to fear the quiet. Young people sometimes think silence means something is wrong, but silence is where love gathers its strength. It's where hearts breathe. It's where tenderness finds its voice. Love is not the noise. Love is the warmth that lingers after the noise is gone. In the end, what I want them to know is simple. True love will not rescue you. It will grow with you. True love will not consume you. It will steady you. True love will not be perfect. It will be real. And if they carry these truths gently, I believe their hearts will find exactly what they're meant to find. Not a story made of fireworks, but a life lit by embers that refuse to fade. So now, as the evening folds itself around us, I want to leave you with a quiet thought. Something simple, something soft enough to rest beside you as the night settles in. Life has a way of rushing, even when we try to slow it down. The hours slip past like water through open fingers, and love, in all its forms, can feel like something we must chase to keep. But tonight, just for a moment, I want you to imagine that nothing needs to be chased. Not love, not certainty, not answers. Imagine instead
that everything you need sits beside you like a calm companion, breathing slowly, offering you space. Close your eyes if you like. Picture a small lake at dusk, the kind where the water rests so still it mirrors the sky. No wind, no hurry, just a quiet surface holding the last gold of the day. That stillness, that gentle pause, that's the peace I wish for you. Let the noise of today drift away like ripples fading across that lake. Let your worries loosen their grip the way leaves let go of branches when the season asks them to. Let each breath arrive like a soft tide touching the shore. Nothing to force, nothing to earn, just the body remembering what it means to be here. If your heart feels heavy tonight, imagine placing that weight beside you, like setting down a stone you've carried too long. It doesn't need to disappear. It only needs to rest. You only need to rest. And if there is love in your life, let it warm you. If there is longing, let it soften you. If there is uncertainty, let it wait until morning. You are allowed to be gentle with yourself. You are allowed to be quiet. You are allowed to simply exist without proving, without performing, the way the moon exists. Steady, patient, glowing just enough. As you drift toward sleep, I hope you feel the peace of a calm river, the hush of a slow breeze through tall grass, the tender comfort of knowing that you are exactly where you need to be in this moment. And may your night be light, warm, and full of the quiet kind of love, the kind that asks for nothing, yet stays. Good night, mi querido. Rest softly. Rest deeply.